welcome, can I thank Bishop Daniel? Can I thank the Coptic Church for hosting this event? Can I acknowledge all of the significant faith leaders, community leaders and members of the media who are here tonight? Really, I'm here to give a number of key messages and to hope that you can spread those messages as well. And so I'm here in my capacity as the Assistant Minister for Multicultural Affairs and Social Services, and particularly in that capacity, I know we've got many representatives of ethnic media here and various cultural leaders to talk about the importance of people voting in the postal survey or postal plebiscite as some are referring to it. There is no doubt that this is a very important vote for the Australian people. We are looking at how we define marriage. Marriage as it's been understood between a man and a woman, as it's been understood for time immemorial. I personally will be voting no for a number of reasons which I will get to. But more important than how I'll be voting, because I am but one. I get one vote out of 16 million Australians who are on the electoral roll. And so the other 15,999,999 should also be having their say. And I would encourage all Australians to have their say. And I would encourage you to be encouraging your communities to have their say. Because this is an issue that's not just about whether or not you change the Marriage Act, because when you, in my opinion, when you change marriage, you change other things. There are other flow-on impacts, which we've seen in other countries who have redefined their understanding of marriage. So from my perspective, it has impacts on religious freedom. It has impacts on people's freedom to speak. It has impacts on what is taught in schools and parents' ability to influence or choose what their children are taught. Because when you change gender in the Marriage Act, you are making a fundamental statement about gender, and so there are some of those flow-on impacts, and we've heard about them. Some people say they're red herrings. I disagree, because you only have to look at some of the experience, whether it's in Canada, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in parts of the United States, similar countries to us, when they have gone down this path, some of those things have flowed. So my message, though, is about getting people to vote. It is absolutely critically important. Now, there are a number of technical things. If people haven't received their survey forms in the mail, there is an ABS number, and we'll get those numbers to you. 8 a.m. till 8 p.m, I understand it's open, so people can call and say, I haven't got my survey form, I would like it, and the ABS will mail it out to you. The deadline that the ABS is very strongly encouraging people to vote by is the 27th of October, and that is about the latest. So I would be arguing, and I would ask you to be spreading the word in your communities that people should be doing it as soon as possible. Do it this week if possible. Do it certainly next week if possible. But it is important that we are having these conversations, that we are having conversations right around the country in communities, because fundamentally when we made this decision as a government to allow the Australian people to have their say, we made it less about politicians and we made it more about each and every one of you. You know, it is about you, some of you as faith leaders, some of you as community leaders, but you as parents, as brothers and sisters, as people in your neighbourhood, as community leaders. Those conversations should be taking place, and it is absolutely critical that they do. There is no doubt, I think we've seen as this debate has gone on, that many in the community have felt up until recently at least, that having a view that was about maintaining the definition of marriage as it is between a man and a woman, that somehow there's been a bit of a fear for people to speak out because they get criticised, in some cases they get mocked, but we are seeing more and more people, I think, as we've seen this debate, we've seen people having more and more the freedom and the courage to speak. Many Australians don't like being told what to think and what to say and what to believe, but many feel that they've been told by members of the government, by politicians, by parts of the media, by sporting groups, by big business, what they should be thinking. I want to say also that those who maintain the view of marriage as being between a man and a woman, they are loving people. They are not doing that out of bigotry or hatred, as some people have suggested. And I think that that is very important. I also think it's very important that as we're having this debate, we do it in a respectful way. And I trust all of the people here to do that. That we do it, we don't demonise other people in our community, but we make a strong and passionate case as to why it's important, why this institution has stood the test of time, and why it should be maintained in its current form. Now, in terms of the way forward, there is no doubt that if it is a no vote, Malcolm Turnbull has made it very clear that from the Coalition's point of view, this issue is settled. And we will not be changing it in this term of Parliament. We will not be taking a position to the next election to be changing the Marriage Act. And that's very important. But of course, if it is a yes vote, there will be legislation that will come, and I'm certain that it would get through the Parliament. And what that legislation exactly would look like, we don't know. And that is one of the great uncertainties of this. There is a bill that Senator Dean Smith has put forward. In my opinion, that doesn't go anywhere near protecting some of the issues around religious freedom, around freedom of speech and around parental rights. And so there's an important debate to be had there. But of course, there will be many people who are uncertain. I would say to them, if they're in doubt, that's a pretty good reason to vote no and to stick with the status quo. But my message to all of you would be to say every vote does matter. There is no doubt that this race is tightening. There was a view that was put out there, has been put out there over a long period of time that suggests that an overwhelming number of Australians support a change. There are many opinion polls now that are starting to show that that may not be the case, that support that was claimed may not be quite as strong as was claimed. But the only way that the no vote can be successful is if your communities are encouraged to participate, if they are encouraged to have their say, and if they understand that all of those votes will be very, very critical. So I would be very happy to throw it open to any questions or any discussion, but my main message, I'll repeat it again, encourage your people, encourage people you know, encourage people you have contact with in your communities, in your congregations, to have their say. And of course, you should be putting your views as to why you might think that changing the Marriage Act isn't a good idea and may have all sorts of potential negative implications, many of which may not even be foreseen. So I'm happy to throw it to any questions if you'd like, and we can take it from there.
I think it's better to do it through the ballot of the federal election or whatever, because through the polls there is a chance to cheating, to cheat people, to change some everything. So the decision will be not right as it should be.
Well, thank you. I mean, I've been assured about the integrity measures of the postal ballot, and there's certainly a lot of work that's going into that. Matthias Cormann, as the acting Special Minister of State, has had put a lot of work into that, and of course the ABS generally. Can I say that the postal ballot was not our first choice? Our first choice as a government was to get legislation through Parliament for a plebiscite. So that would have been done in the ordinary way. People would show up to a polling booth, they would put their ballot paper in the box, but we didn't have the numbers in the Senate in order to get that through, but we were determined to give the Australian people their say. We made it very clear, we took a policy to the last election that the Australian people would have their say, and so whilst this wasn't our first way of delivering that, we still think it's a very powerful way for the Australian people to be able to have their say. And so that's why it's so important that people do participate, because obviously the higher the participation rate, the stronger the message will be from the community, and the clearer it will be. And obviously then we will certainly know what the Australian people think.
Thank you for being here and coming to and explaining to us about this very important and issue regarding the marriage. My question is about the procedure that the government followed. As Australians, we know that if you're voting no, it means that the definition will stay the same and things will continue the same. Also for the Australian, if voting yes, they are saying to them it's only to change the definition. But I believe it's much more than that. And my question is why the government didn't explain to the Australians what are the changes or the consequences of voting yes before sending the postal vote. In a way, the yes vote is a misleading vote, if I can say.
Well, look, thank you, Bishop. It's a fair question, and I think it's fair to say that within the government there are differing views on what the implications of changing the Marriage Act would be, and I think that's very clear. There are some in the government who believe that you can change the Marriage Act and there won't be further implications, and they are obviously in many cases arguing for a yes vote. There are many in the government, like myself, others, who believe that changing the Marriage Act is not only something that we shouldn't do, but one of the reasons we shouldn't do it is that it does have some of those further implications. So, look, I think your question goes, is fair in the sense that this is not a perfect process, but I think that this goes to the importance of, I guess, every Australian really hearing the case very clearly. We have the opportunity to have a conversation as a nation and for people to really consider those things and to consider whether there are further implications. And the No case has been making that argument very strongly. Many coalition MPs and senators have been making that argument. There are some on the other side, obviously from Labor and the Greens, and some in the coalition who are making an alternate case. But the Australian people, I think, given that this is a process over a couple of months, it is longer than an ordinary election campaign, there is the opportunity for people to get informed, and that's where, again, people in this room are a critical part of people being informed and talking about those very implications.
This debate will stop here, or there is another step in the future. So the supporter for yes, for the same-sex marriage will stop, or there is another step for them?
Well, look, it's difficult for me to say what supporters of same-sex marriage would do. Obviously, there's a range of different people. I think, there's a lot of people of goodwill who want to change the Marriage Act, and they believe on equality grounds. I think there are another segment of the Yes campaign, and certainly supporters of the Yes case, who have a fairly radical sort of agenda that goes with it. So there's obviously there's a mix of motives that are there across the board. I would say that certainly from the government's perspective, if it's a no vote, then this issue from our perspective is settled. I can't say what Yes campaigners might do. In the end, that is a matter for them. We are in a democracy and people are always free to advocate for whatever they would like. But whether or not they would have any momentum, if the Australian people very clearly say no, I think they would, and I think that would be a very strong moral case that has been given, where we've gone to the people. What can be fairer than going directly to the people and saying, what do you want? In a democracy, fundamentally, the people get to choose some of these big issues. And if the Australian people say no, then of course we should honour that, and that's what the government will do. If they say yes, then we have to honour that as well as a parliament. And so, this is a big challenge for all of us, and it's a big challenge for those of us who feel strongly about it. But if you're going to go down the path of consulting the Australian people and asking them for their say, then I think you have to respect what they have to say.
Mr. Minister, what keeps democracy running, especially the democracy in the Western world, is the role that the media plays. And we know that media is supposed to be a fair player. Sadly, whenever you turn on the TV or the radio, it seems that there is only one voice. Yet all media outlets keep on reminding the people that we are here to report both sides. And we know it, whether we read the newspaper or whatever, everybody expects to hear both sides in order to make their decision. Yet this is not the case. And I'm wondering how come the government does not step in, not to impose, but to remind the media, who is supposed to be the watchdog, in order that to allow a fairer opportunity for both sides and for also coming for debates. So how come this is not taking place?
Well, look, again, it's a very good question. I have publicly stated early on in this campaign that I think that there has been a lot of bias in the media on this issue. I think that large parts of the media, not all of the media, but large parts of the media have become, in some ways, advocates on this issue for the yes case rather than fairly reporting. Now, there's plenty of exceptions to that, but if you look at our national broadcaster, the ABC, I think even Media Watch has said some time ago that their coverage of these sort of issues hasn't been balanced, that they haven't given enough weight or enough time to the alternate argument. And I think there's been some who have been running certainly campaigns, and that goes beyond the ABC. That's in a number of aspects of the media. I think that in terms of, obviously, the government can't dictate to the media what they do. It is a free media, and they are in some ways free to be biased, but that said, not so much the ABC. The ABC should be fair and balanced. But I've certainly raised it. I think it's a good point, and I think certainly it's worth, where you see examples of the media not being fair, and I think there are plenty, then I would encourage you, and I would encourage you to encourage people you have influence over to be getting on the phone to the Minister for Communications and to the ABC or to the broadcaster, whatever network it might be, or media outlet, and making your views known, because they will take that seriously if many people complain. There is no doubt they don't like, they have an audience. They don't want to offend their audience, but if there is a large chunk of that audience who are offended, they should make their voices known. And sometimes we are not good enough at forcefully expressing our views and encouraging others to do the same. And I would encourage you to do so.
I work in the city, Sydney City. You can see in the Sydney City, some of the streets, right? The Sydney Council put the flags. They say they openly support the Yes campaign. Why is that? Can they use the taxpayer money to support one side? What's your view about that, Minister?
Well, look, I come from a place called Canberra, and in Canberra we have a government who's doing the same thing as Sydney City Council. So we have an ACT government who are doing similar things. In fact, they've got buses, rainbow buses going all around the city, and I've certainly raised my concerns about that. Unfortunately, governments can make those decisions if they like, and they can in the end only be held to account by their ratepayers or by their taxpayers or by their voters. So the Sydney City Council, Clover Moore, I guess she believes that most of her constituents support that. And even if that's the case, and it may well be the case, it still doesn't make it right, I think, for governments to be engaged in that kind of political campaigning using taxpayers' dollars, because even if a majority support a particular view, there will be other people within that community who don't. And so we don't have a tyranny of the majority. And so, you know, again, this is something where people should be making their voices heard on this. Of course, ultimately people have the ability to get rid of that council or that government, but in the meantime, you can put pressure on them. If many hundreds or many thousands of people, you know, start phoning the offices of the local council, start campaigning, start putting pressure on through the media or other ways or through social media, that can have an impact. But I would also make this point, that there is also, I think, a bit of a feeling in the community that maybe that this actually might work against the yes case. That, you know, many Australians who maybe don't have a strong view, yes or no, may feel that there is too much bullying, or there is too much of governments or others telling people what they should think. And I think many Australians will respond to that by voting no. Many Australians, you know, and Australians take their personal decision making very seriously. They take their vote very seriously. They take their ability to have their own views very, very seriously. And so when you have organisations and corporations and governments seeking to impose their view, I think it may well backfire.
I just have a concern. I'm a parent, and I work for the Department of Family and Community Services. And a major concern that I have for all parents is that their rights will be taken away if there are consequences to the marriage laws where they will introduce radical education to our young children as young as 5 years old. Where is the government stepping in to protect our children of the future?
Well, look, it's a really good point, and it is one of the real issues of concern. It's certainly, I know the No case has been putting that forward, and they've had mothers speaking about some of their concerns. They've got examples that are happening in some of our schools right now, and there's a concern that, of course, not only would that continue, but it would potentially go wider, and it would be more difficult to object. Now, those advocating yes say that the two issues are completely separate, that there is no link. Now, I've seen, I've read court cases and reports from places like Canada where there's a case which I think is run as an ad, a fellow called Steve Touloukis, and he has seen that when they changed the marriage laws, that he was no longer able to object to that kind of education for his kids. So it's a very legitimate concern. It is one of the strongest reasons, I think, for people to vote no. And I think that one of the reasons the yes case has suggested that there is no link is because I think they know that there are many parents who would be very, very concerned about exactly what you've raised. So I think as a parent, you've got the ability to talk to other parents about your concerns, and you can cite some of those overseas examples and say, well, this is what happened in Canada. In the UK, we know that there are schools who are having their registration threatened because they don't want to teach these kind of things, Jewish schools and others. So it hasn't necessarily just been in the public sector. That is a concern, but also even into some faith-based schools as well.
What we also notice, okay, so a normal footy game where mums and dads take their children to watch a footy game, they've turned it into a political arena where they are strongly voicing yes to the audience because they know they have a large audience. Yeah. They have like 3 million, 4 million people watching the footy game. Yeah. Why do we put in a whole range of political issues into a normal footy game where people, mums and dads and families, just want to watch a normal game? Yeah. So what they're doing is using it to their advantage. Yeah. The media is biased towards the Yes campaign.
Well, look, unfortunately, I think that's the case. I note there's a change.org petition at the moment on that very issue in terms of politicisation of the grand final and the football and things. So I'd encourage people, if they feel strongly about it, to sign that petition because that does have an impact and that will potentially cause the NRL to think about these issues. But it is one of the great challenges, and it is up to the community to respond to these things because in Australia, the government doesn't get to dictate to the NRL or to anyone else what they say. It's up to the members, it's up to fans, it's up to people in the clubs and other people to respond and say if they don't support what the NRL is doing. And that's why so much of this is about a community response. the heavy hand of government won't work here. In a democracy, we don't like always what other people say, but they have a right, with limited exceptions, to say it. And so, but you can respond as a community, and you can say, well, you've got a right to speak, you've got a right to do that, but we've also got a right to respond in various peaceful, democratic ways. And I think you should take those opportunities. I think we're going to be. I think we've got time for a couple more questions.
The Act itself, when they changed it, and then the High Court came in and rejected the change. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
So shouldn't that have sent a clear message? But however, we're back here a few years later with the same issue, but now good opportunity that the government's giving us a say this time around. Should it be, if it does, the no vote win, should it be send a clear message to the government that, hey, leave the Marriage Act alone?
Look, on the second part of your question, absolutely. I think it will send that message, and the government, through the Prime Minister, has very much said what our response will be should it be a no vote, and also alternatively if it were a yes. I think what you're referring to is the High Court decision in relation to the ACT Assembly's passage of same-sex marriage legislation. So there were two things that were done. It was a unanimous decision of the High Court, I think, and it ruled that the ACT did not have jurisdiction to pass marriage laws. That's an exclusive Commonwealth jurisdiction. But the second thing that it did rule was that there was the capacity for the Australian Parliament to redefine what marriage is, as it's been, so from how it's been understood. So I think that was the other critical part of that, and that was what enables the Australian Parliament to actually change the definition of marriage. And that's then we've taken the view that the Australian people should directly have their say as to whether or not that should happen or not.
Minister, what's happening if the majority of the Australians said yes? Is the Australian government can force our churches to accept the same-sex marriage the way that they accepted in Colombia? They married 3 people now, and how the church protecting their beliefs and their faith?
Well, look, I can say, to be fair to my government, I think there is no one in my government who, even with a yes vote, would want to enforce churches to marry same-sex couples against their will. But we don't know what a future government might do once the marriage law is changed, and I guess that's the great unknown, isn't it? That's the great challenge. So I absolutely believe my colleagues when they say they don't, even though they support same-sex marriage, they don't want to force it on churches or on rabbis or priests or imams or anyone else. But in other countries, there's been some movement towards that in some countries. I think it's fair to say. I know that in some countries there's certainly discussion of it. I'm not aware whether that legislation has actually passed in some. I was aware that I think the Speaker of the UK Parliament did say something to that effect. That's certainly not UK law, I would stress, but that you can see how these things sort of creep over time. I would make this point, though, that we can, religious freedom is a core value and it's very, very important. And the Prime Minister, I think, very graciously said recently, he said he believes in freedom of religion more than he believes in same-sex marriage. And I think that's very, very important, a very important statement. But I would also say that people who have no faith also have rights in this space. There are some people who have no faith but don't believe in changing the Marriage Act. Now, that is not a religious issue for them, but it is an issue of conscience. And so we can say that in the legislation at the moment it will stop, and the legislation at the moment will ensure that if you're a priest, you won't have to perform a same-sex wedding. That is the current legislation that's on the table. Whether that was changed in 5 or 10 years' time is another question. But notwithstanding, and even if that was locked in stone forever, there are other people who are not religious who also have rights to conscientious objection. And I think that that's another part of the discussion. We shouldn't make it all about people of faith. People of faith are important and freedom of religion is important, but in this space there are people who are not of faith who have objections as well.
That means Your Honourable saying it might be changed in the future.
Well, I think that's one of the risks. Would I say that it definitely would? I don't know. As I say, in the UK, it hasn't been changed. It's been 4 years. I don't think it's been changed in New Zealand or in America and some of those places. So one doesn't always lead to another, but you could certainly foresee a situation where there was pressure down the track for that, and certainly you don't know that a future parliament wouldn't make that decision.
Minister.
I think this will be the last one, if I may.
I'm concerned that something like $15 to $16 million is being spent on this postal vote. Don't you think that as a taxpayer, I would have liked my members of parliament to they have been elected to pass a resolution on such important matters? That is one way of, would have been much more satisfying. You could have saved taxpayers' money. That's one thing. If you really wanted to have that kind of a voting outside the parliament, maybe you could have used even the census system. When we had census recently, you could have asked another question: do you support the marriage or not? So we could have saved a lot of time and all these debates and things like that. It would have been instantaneous results.
Look, a couple of things in response to that. One, in relation to Parliament. Parliament has considered this on a number of occasions and voted no. I think at least 4 times there's been a vote in Parliament in recent years, and it's been a no vote. Now, for various reasons, we came to this decision that the Australian people should have their say, and partly it was because Parliament had considered it, but there was agitation and there was a feeling that one way or another we needed to resolve this issue. Now, I accept that it's not cheap to go through this process, and I accept that you could have done it potentially in slightly cheaper ways, as you've alluded to. But at the same time, I think that the issue of marriage is important enough to have as a standalone question, and so that does come with additional costs. And I think that the debate that we are having now is actually a good one, where we can actually hear all sides of the argument, because I think until we had this postal plebiscite, I think it's fair to say that the arguments had been pretty superficial, and we hadn't really had a genuine conversation as a community about this. And I think what I'm picking up now is that there are many conversations going on in the community now, and people who absolutely support equality, because I think we all support equality, are perhaps asking, well, is this the best way to achieve equality? Are there better ways without redefining marriage? And that's at the heart of the tension. That's at the heart of the tension. I don't believe that everyone who wants to change the Marriage Act comes at it from anything other than a desire to do good. I just happen to disagree with their means of delivering what they want to achieve. So I don't sort of assign poor motives to all of our opponents on this. I don't think we should do that in public debate. But I think where we disagree, we should actually put forward the reasons we disagree. This plebiscite has enabled that to happen, and I think for that reason alone, it's very, very important. If nothing else, even if it is a yes vote, so I would be disappointed with that personally, but I think that those who oppose that result should still be pleased that all of the arguments were able to be aired, that millions of people will no doubt, whatever the result, millions of people would have voted no, and that because of that debate, I think things like religious freedom have really been put forward in a more prominent way, and things like freedom of speech and parental rights, and there's been an acknowledgement from both sides of politics that those things are important to protect. Now, exactly what that looks like is a matter for negotiation, but I think that's already been one positive outcome of the debate. Now, I think we'll have a final question here.
My question is, this postal vote, we are always consider it as a democratic process, but if we will see how the media is, behaving or acting, if we will see the amount of money with the Yes campaign, if we will see a lot of, things happened during this campaign, and mainly when we will say that this is democracy, we should listen to each other. We should, inflect our point of view to the others. The no campaign
we are prohibited from the media, from major events. If we will breathe, they will, put, sometimes hell on our head. And at the end, I know why I'm saying no also. In a democracy, they are saying yes and they don't know what will the changes will be. And at the same time, at the end, they will expect us to respect this process. If it is democratic process, I will respect it. If not, I don't know. Where are we going as, as a community, as a country? There is a serious problem in our, living as Australians here. Australia is the land of freedom. After this, it will be the land of freedom for many of us. This is the big challenge, and it will never end. Now, it's the beginning of a big struggle. And no one thinks that it will end. If some politicians, they will say, yeah, tomorrow it will be business as usual. If the no campaign, they will win, or the yes campaign, they will win. No, they have put us in a very difficult situation, and no one will, especially for the no campaign, we will never stop our struggle.
Well, look, it's again, it's a really good point you make. I think that there is no doubt that a number of the points you make are very valid in terms of the amount of money on one side, in terms of the media, in terms of a range of things. I guess there's no perfect process and there is no perfect society, and we're dealing with all of the imperfection of all of that. I would still finish on a positive note to say that I think one of the things that this discussion has done, it has, I think, energised a lot of people to realise that there are genuine things to fight for in the public square. People of faith, in many cases, let's face it, all of us would prefer to live our lives and not have to have some of these public debates, right? Because they're difficult. They are difficult. We'd much prefer to just get on with our lives and do our thing and look after our families and not have, these kind of public debates. But they are important. And I think there are more and more people in the community, not exclusively people of faith, but certainly a lot of people of faith who are realising the importance of being engaged in the public square, of being engaged in politics, of participating in debates, because I think the sort of left in our community in broad terms has sort of at a grassroots level has done this more effectively over time, and it's perhaps one of the reasons that they have won some of those battles. And so it is important that good people have their say on this issue, and again I put that call out, but also have their say on other things. As you say, win or lose, there's still going to be things that you care about and I care about that are going to be a struggle in our democracy. There are going to be freedoms that are freedom is always sort of under threat in one form or another. If you look around the world and you put Australia in a historic context and in a world context, we are still amazingly fortunate with the freedoms that we have. But those freedoms are hard won, and we need to continue to fight for them. So you're right. This win or lose, this won't be the end of various battles, but I think that hopefully we will see people energised, people empowered, people seeing that actually there are millions of others who agree with them, and I think that will give people a lot of courage. All right, well, we might leave it there. Thank you.
I'd just like to announce also on behalf of the Australian Eastern Council of Bishops that the Eastern churches in Australia are all collaborating together to organise and hold next Sunday, the 8th of October, the Festival for the Family at Fairfield Showground, starting from 2 p.m. The idea of this festival is, firstly, for the Eastern churches to show their unity and to show their presence to the Australian public. And secondly, it's a chance for all the Eastern church parishioners in Sydney, as well as anyone else who has the same values of us, that there are people that believe in the family. And instead of holding a rally or a protest and marching through the streets, we're just going to hold a festival with rides and food and entertainment, whereby you and your whole families are welcome, so that we can show, firstly, the government that there are people like us who exist, who believe in the family, who believe there is something worth fighting for, and that there are also a younger generation who believe in all of this. At the moment, it's pitched as if all the youth have been won by the Yes campaign, if you want, which is not the case at all. In working on the campaign, we found that there are a lot of youth who are willing to put in the hours, almost full-time work hours, volunteering out there on the streets and trying to share the message that it is okay to vote no, and it is okay to want to protect the family and protect our children and protect our schools. So it's an open invite to all of our Eastern brothers and sisters, and also anyone else, also from the Western Church, who also would like to essentially celebrate traditional marriage and celebrate the family and celebrate the values which have brought us so far as a society. Of course, and the Minister, you are. We would like to officially invite you to the festival if you have the time. We know your schedule is very busy, but we would love you to have to.
Mr. Minister, thank you very much for coming and attending this media conference with us. And thank you for the Conference of Bishop and Representative of Eastern Bishop, Apostolic Bishops coming, Bishop Robert Rabat, Bishop Anton Charbel Tarabe, and all the members. I would like to announce also that based on the recommendation of the Eastern bishops here, we are going to declare the fasting of the Coptic Orthodox community from Wednesday to Friday, 4th, 5th, and 6th October. Fasting from the first degree, because we need the mercy of the Lord. Thank you very much, your kindness for coming and answering the questions. I don't want to ask any other questions, and I would like to invite His Grace Bishop Robert to conclude this prayer.
In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Dear Lord, you said whenever 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, I will be in their midst. We do hope and pray that what was said today was pleasing to your ears, and that you were in our midst. May you always lead us to repeat without fear the same words that you said when you were at the cross, addressing our Heavenly Father, saying, "Let it be done according to thy will." This is our mission as believers, as leaders of the churches. We're called to never forget that every person, every creature on earth was created in the image and likeness of God. However, our mission is to tell the truth as you wished it since eternity. Thank you for all your blessing, and may you guide us and enlighten the minds of people of all the world, especially nowadays in Australia, people of goodwill, to vote according to their conscience, which will be no doubt and no without a blink of the eye. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you.
من يوم التريسر بيرخى هذه اللي هجاوح بيرخى ديلول مشريلا حكومة أسترالية مشادورة كثوانة تكوتخا أسترالي تدعم رائدية بقو موضوع دقوارا كمرخلد مثليين same sex marriage ما هذا بالهاويثن خسؤال وجواب إيثن تريمندي يعني بقاوح ين يس ين نو كإيتا قدشتا قاثولي قيتا وكل إيتا ثخن أخني ووخ أمد نو تأث تعديل دبار بقو موضوع أو تحديد دقوارا بقو قانون الأسترالي إن الخش ليس معنا دمشا خلبيلة موضوع دقوارا بايش لا بينا ثقور أو بختا بايش بينا ثتري برصوبة قبار تري قورانا تتعيش أو غيريهم ما هذا كم رخت كل عمديا إنه أخني إيتا مدنوي وخ إيمان مطلع خوارخ كثاوة كثوتنا ونلاقي ذوتو إيثن كل أوفيسات الإتاثة ديا ولا بثيخ كديوم تنمعني لأخو تكثوتنا تا شخلوب تغيره الأثمن دي الآلة دريح بقو برناشة ودي من طبيعة برناشة أنه قوارة بس بنثقورة وبختير كايتا قدشتا قاثريقيتا وكل إيتا ثرمشيحة أخني كبيرة وخكلي مدنو تشخلوب دث قرار قايلة أنا مشخ مدم آثر الإيتاثة لبش كايبا أخني المكرزخ ملبخ بشكل رندا ومن دي دريا من آلها بقو كثاوة قديشة بقو البانديتا دي القوارة بنثقورة خقورة وضبختا وبنفس الوقت هم آثر كبير العوائل عوائل لبش كايلة علاقة كويسة مد عيال ديي بقو مدارس ما هبا شويلة عيال ديي ما شكل نوع من تنشئة من تربية بش كبيرة من ناحية الجنسية كبير شو لان حتى لفظ بابا ويما بتباش مشو خلبة لبش كاويثن بابا ويما أو بابا واثا باشي مسؤولين اللي دا عيالة بقو شولانا كبير شولانا بدم أثري اي من داثة خشخص من كبت قاور من داني جاي وكب خامر شولة لكما أو شولة اي بتشاكل له إذا نخني الكلان أسباب دم غيري كبدم غيري مجتمع ديا كبدم غيري مبادئ ديا كبدم غيري ومن يدي الآلة هدري يحقو طبيعة برناشة إنه قوالة بنذقر وبختيلة قالك كلا إيمان ماطلنا أث رسالة تكثو خنو تشخلو بداس من دي ويمن لك يذوتو يمن لها يبوخو دم جابوتو كل أوفيسات الإيتا ثديين ولا بثيخ كديوم معاني لو خب قواس من دي ما هذا كلا قالك دم رخنو تشخلو بد معنى دقوالة قالين آلة الدريح وطبيعة برناشة إنه قوالة بنات خقورة وخبختيل
Have this first interview on this the Christian channel, and especially dedicated to the young people. And of course, when we think about our journey as people of the church and as young people in the church, we have to go back to our Lord. And our Lord said to us, "They will persecute you as they persecuted me," because in our word, the truth is not liked. Justice is not liked. So therefore, I believe our young people living and in today's society, they are struggling with these issues. However, I'd like to tell them, as the Lord said, and said to all of us, don't be afraid, I'm with you. And if the Lord is with us, we don't need anyone else or anything else. So young people, we'd like you to be assured that the Lord is with you. The Lord loves you. Therefore, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to proclaim your faith in the Lord. Don't be afraid to proclaim your values and living your values. Don't be afraid to proclaim that you love the family and the marriage between men and women and men and women only.
Thank you. And for the youth out there who don't care too much about politics and who are not interested in voting in this campaign, what message do you have for them?
Yeah, for the wider community of young people, I'll tell them there is the human dimension when it comes to a human sense and the human family. And we have to be gathered together. We have to open up to each other and try to start a discussion and dialogue with each other for the good of the society, for their own good, for the good of the family and the future, their future and the future of the nation. Therefore, I invite them to take stand, to understand that there is many of opportunities to make a difference. One of them is to vote in this coming postal vote and to vote no to defend family and marriage.
Thank you, Sedna. Please keep us in your prayers. So CYC stands for Christian Youth Channel. So we're here to speak to the Christian youth of Australia, the Coptic youth. Yep. And the Yes campaign has been really loud, and it's been diminishing our hopes and not giving us opportunity to have strong faith in our government. What message do you have to the youth to give them hope about this campaign?
Well, I would say first, have courage. Second, that there are millions of other people like you who don't want to see marriage changed. And finally, I would say that if you do get out and vote, or if you do get out and volunteer, you can actually deliver a vote to keep marriage as it is. This may well end up being a very close vote, and so I would encourage you to have your say, and if you have the opportunity to volunteer, to talk to people you know, and to encourage other people to do the same.
Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Sayyidina, I'm Daniel. Welcome to CYC, the Christian Youth Channel. Please, we would like a message for the youth out there. What is the Coptic Church doing in this debate that's happening on the plebiscite that's been happening in Australia with the yes and no vote?
Thank you for CYC. My main message to the Coptic Orthodox youth of the Diocese of Sydney is to take the right and fight for the right and vote. Vote according to the Bible teaching, according to the teaching that we receive from our Holy Fathers, according to our conscience, because marriage, as we know from the book of Genesis, is between man and woman. This is what we know, what we learn, what we have in our mind since we are children. So my main message, please vote and don't lose your rights.
So, a lot of our youth in the workplace are being bullied and are suffering persecution. What can us youth, Christian youth, do in this environment to maintain our Christian values?
I think persecution is going to continue for the Church of God until the end of the age, until the second coming of Christ. As youth Christians, we need to endure persecution, and we need to go to God through prayer and fasting. And because of this, Mina, I declared an issue to fast on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4th, 5th, 6th of October, this year, 2017, seeking the mercies of God so that He can support us with the campaign Difficult Battle we are playing together as believers against these new teachings.
So, the Yes campaign is very loud and strong. What message do you have to youth to still maintain hope that we can win this?
I think always as Christians we do have hope. Even in the difficult times, we had been subjected, Mina, as you know, to severe persecution since the first century, the time of St. Mark, and then since the 3rd century persecution of Diocletian, and the list goes on until the 21st century. My main message to the youth, please try to have a strong faith and not anyone shaking your face concerning this issue and other issues who are going to come, the issue of atheism, the other issues of strange doctrine that we are facing in this country or other countries. So have a strong faith and be a true believer of Jesus Christ.
Thank you, Sayyidina. Keep us in your prayers, please.
Thank you, Mina. I wish you all the best. Please, I repeat, all the youth, I need you to fast Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 4th, 5th, and 6th October 2017 for this purpose.
Thank you, sir.
God bless you, Mina.